So I've been playing Fragile Dreams. Dreams! Whether they're nightmares, wet ones, or just regular ass dreams, shit can get pretty fucking weird. Running away from oncoming traffic and not being able to move, waking up bald or teethless, or being buried alive, my dreams tend to be pretty not great. Now imagine that, and then making it fragile, said Kentaro Kawashima, the creator of this game, to the Bandai Namco executives. I don't know, mate. That shit sounds pretty fucking stupid, like. But sir, there will be anime titties and a really, really whiny protagonist. We'll be sure to make big yen bucks. Well, I do like me some yen bucks, but also maybe, perhaps, some of them anime titties, said the Bandai Namco executive. Then sir, please, give us the chance to make this game. Well, alright then, let's do it, brother! And that's how this game was made. Fact! The story of Fragile Dreams follows the tale of a young man called Seto. Seto lives in a space stars observatory thingy place situation together with his grandpa. Why? I don't know, but what I do know is that the world of Fragile Weebs is one of the post-apocalyptic variety. And as such, most of humanity has gone the way of the dodo. As grandpas often tend to do, however, Seto's specimen dies of old age and thus leaves Seto all by himself. And so, Seto goes outside where he touches some half-naked chick for some reason.
I touched her.
And then decides that in order to not be alone and whitey all the time, he should follow her. And as a result, he meets a bunch of people involving all sorts of zany adventures. Yeah. Now, to say that this game has a story-heavy focus would be quite the fucking understatement, as the game is basically a visual novel. But then, instead of it having text and sliding manga panels, it has heaps upon heaps of cutscenes. Seriously, the game has a cutscene density that would make even Hideo Kojima go limp. So it is a moderately good thing then that the cutscenes in question and the story told through them are actually pretty okay good. Though perhaps a bit too weeby and whiny for most, as even for my tastes, it does get a little bit cringy here and there. But it does have some legitimately good writing and voice acting that, paired with the overall tone, do make for a pretty intriguing experience. And because of that, it's hard for me not to respect it, at least to some degree. Anyway, despite all of that story mumbo-jumbo, the game has convinced itself that it needed to be a survival horror game for some fucking reason. So, it's a survival horror game. For some fucking reason. So what you do is walk around the rather linear levels, hit ghosts with a stick, shine your flashlight at things, and trigger cutscenes. And that's quite literally it. There aren't really any puzzles or anything like that, and it's really just a game about exploring the admittedly cool-looking locations with atmosphere shooting out of its rock-hard wazoo, and really, really awkward combat. You see, as you traverse the rather desolate world of wonder and merriment, ghosts will appear at random because JRPG, I guess. These ghosts, while pretty cool in design sometimes, don't really do much or pose much of a threat. And instead of doing something cool, like using a ghost vacuum or something, Seto just kinda does whatever the fuck this is for a few seconds and then they leave out of boredom. Now, of course, one could argue that with this being a horror game, the combat is supposed to be awkward to a certain degree. But to me, there is definitely a limit as to how far you can take that, and this game takes it too fucking far. I mean, in Silent Hill, for instance, the combat is terrible, but at least it still feels good to use, mostly because of the sound effects and the pretty great animation quality. And Fragile Dweebs doesn't really do any of that. The combat is flaccid, boring, and repetitive, and it really kills the game, especially near the end. Luckily though, in a twisted, not all that lucky kind of way, it's also very easy. The game would have been borderline unplayable if it would have actually been hard along with the not fun. So that's sort of good, I guess. Probably not though. Now, another survival horror staple is having awkward and or nauseating and or a cinematic camera. And despite the overabundance of cutscenes, Fragile Queens only has the awkwardness. You see, turning the camera and positioning yourself right during combat is quite unwieldy because of it being done with rather slow motion controls. I don't know how much of this is the game's fault or if it's just the Wii being the Wii, as this is my very first Wii game besides Brawl, but it's still not great either way. Although using it for the flashlight to look at things works fine. It's just when walking around or trying to turn, and especially during the combat, that this is very, very frustrating to use. Seriously, the game's biggest enemies are its camera and the controls. And what certainly doesn't help is the fact that they went for a Silent Hill style map system. What that means is that the map develops as you uncover shit. And in every other instance this would have been great, but it doesn't actually show a little blip highlighting your own fucking location. And while I partially appreciate the realism, it makes it absolutely impossible to know where the fuck you are. Especially later on in the bigger maze-like areas, the map could just as well have not even been there. Not that you'd really need it as much as you would do in Silent Hill, as the game frequently interrupts you every fucking second to tell you where to go anyway, but it still kinda sucks. Now, something that actually doesn't suck is this cool little thing that the game does called Mementos. These Mementos are personal accounts given by people right before they died during the apocalypse. They're kinda presented as little audiobooks and are by far the coolest part of the entire game. Thing is that they give a lot more personal and emotional depth than most other post-apocalyptic tales tend to give, simply by showing the stories of regular people. From a couple fighting in their last moments spent together to a child regretting never having apologized for lying to his mom, these seemingly insignificant tales really do a lot to give this world some much needed depth. But that said though, these are just audio thingies, and for that reason alone I can see them being boring for quite a few people. But as someone who actually likes horror more so for its characters and subtleties than for its raw scares and gore, this is greatly appreciated. Anyway, the way that you find these mementos is either by having enemies drop them or just by picking them up off the floor. And the same goes for weapons and healing items as well. However, there is a catch to all of this. And that's that everything you find is labeled as a mystery item, as it's too dark to see. Even though these areas seem pretty fucking bright to me. But still, what you need to do is take these mystery items to a bonfire, where you'll be able to unpack everything and see what it is, and then listen to the mementos, manage your inventory, or buy some shit from the chicken man merchant man. And while I actually really kind of sort of like this idea, it's hard to deny that the way it's been put into practice is far from optimal. thing is that they haven't really placed these mystery items in locations where it would make sense for them to do so. Like right after a fucking bonfire, for instance. It does this quite often, and it's really fucking frustrating as you have to go back to the bonfire just to be able to deal with your inventory, as the inventory in question is really fucking tiny because, guys, it's a survival horror game, I swear, believe me, please. Ooh. From healing items and weapons to mementos and key items, everything goes in the same fucking place. You see, the game actually uses an RE4 style slot-based inventory, which would have been fine if it wasn't for the fact that the weapons have durability. So, quite often you'll be carrying around 2 weapons in case one breaks mid-battle. That already covers about half your inventory. Then you'll probably be carrying around 1 or 2 key items and maybe about 4 or 5 mystery items of which you don't even know what they are or if they're actually worth picking the fuck up, leaving you to either ignore stuff or backtrack to the nearest bonfire just to be able to see what the mystery items hold so you can clear the gunk from your inventory. This is really fucking bad. What they should have done is have the mementos just be playable as you find them, like the notes or audio diaries from literally every other survival horror game ever. Because then you wouldn't have to backtrack all the time or waste items even when you don't really need to just to save some fucking space. Because of course, they didn't balance the amount of healing items you get either. Sigh. Anyway, if you are looking for a proper survival horror game, or if sappy anime bullshit makes you want to kill yourself, then you'd probably do yourself a solid by staying the fuck away. Seriously, this game is about as niche as Sonic inflation porn. So it's most definitely not gonna be for everyone, or even anyone. But as a short little story thingy, it's actually kinda cute in its own weird little way. More than anything, it's a story about life and coping with its many sorrows and finding joy in life despite them. It's a bit preachy and whiny at times, but it can be pretty down to earth and mature as well. Either way, I definitely felt some emotions here and there, and some of the side stories especially really made me want to find out what's actually going on. Though I still hesitate recommending this at all, but I also don't want to call it bad outright. It has some really cool ideas, moments, and locations, and I did almost kind of enjoy it for the majority of my time. But the combat, the inventory, and some rather crippling level design near the end with endless ladders left a really bitter taste in my mouth. Which is a shame, as with a little bit of polish and not quite as awful gameplay, it really could have stood proudly amongst other survival horror games. But as it is now, it'll either bore you to death, piss you right the fuck off, or give you a fun light horror adventure. And I'm just going to assume that it'll more likely be one of the prior than the latter. The end.